Do you hear the people singing the songs of angry adaptations of A Christmas Carol? Hello, I'm Elysia, here again with Luke. Hello, Luke.
Hi, Elysia. How you doing?
And welcome to the darkest entry in this year's We'll Shift Dust, A Christmas Carol canon. This is the third of 4 quarters of Dickens' Christmas coverage this year. This year, our first quarter. So we're saying 4 quarters because we did 5 staves last year because that's how A Christmas Carol, the novella, is broken up. This year, our book was The Chimes. We did a deep dive for subscribers, plus some Christmas essays from Dickens. And The Chimes is broken up into 4 books. We referred to it briefly in the last episode with the Christmas Carol Classics Part 2. So check that out if you haven't. But this, I was just saying right before we recorded that these 2 films we're talking about today are much more in the tone of The Chimes than of A Christmas Carol. Do you agree?
I mean, I would certainly say for the UN special, the the Rod Serling one, I would say that's true. I think the FX BBC Guy Pearce one is actually. I wouldn't say it's faithful to A Christmas Carol, but there's a lot more of a traditional telling of A Christmas Carol in it.
Right. But the tone, you said right before we recorded, you brought up the FX one as being most similar in tone to The Chimes.
Yeah, yeah, I think it is in tone, and I mean it helps that it's a period piece as well. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll talk about it, but the Rod Serling one most certainly is not. Well, it is a period piece.
It is a
It's a very
period, just a different
period.
period.
Yeah.
And it was contemporaneous to its own period. Yeah, so the 2 that we are talking, they are the darker, more sociologically oriented FX's A Christmas Carol from 2019 and the one you may not have heard of, Carol from Another Christmas from 1964. So yeah, this is the third quarter. As we said, first quarter was our subscriber deep dive into the Chimes and Dickens Christmas essays. Second quarter is available to all, and it was looking at more Christmas Carol classics. At the start of that episode, we rattle off all the versions of A Christmas Carol that we've talked about so far, so you can see, you can find those episodes linked in the show notes and listen to that one if you want to a quick catch up. This episode is part 3, and we do have one more to go after this, so stick around until the end for a preview of which feel-good Christmas Carol twists we'll be covering this year. These are not the feel-good twists, that's for sure.
Oh, are you saying when the entirety of civilization is wiped out in a fiery nuclear holocaust, you weren't feeling all warm and fuzzy?
So, spoilers for everything, A Christmas Carol, and particularly these 2 movies. Yeah, no, and I also, I think the darkest thing actually happened in the other one with Mrs. Cratchit.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll definitely get to that.
But yeah, so the format for today, we're doing a bit different for We'll Shift Dust standards, but Lorehounds listeners might recognize this. Since we are doing 2 films, we're going to have a lore down here. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to set up the basics for both films and give our overall hot takes. And then we're going to pit the 2 films head to head across 6 categories. And whichever quote unquote wins the most categories takes this lore down. Is that clear?
Okay, clear.
All right, let's start with your hot takes. Overall, I mean, we don't need to get into the plot details yet. We will, but what did you think of these 2 films?
I really like the FX BBC one, the 2019 one,
Mm-hmm.
the Guy Pearce one. Really enjoyed that. But also, this is probably the point where I'm gonna have a moan at the BBC. Because it's BBC, I couldn't get it off Disney. I had to get it off YouTube because
Oh,
if it's not like everything disappears off the BBC iPlayer after a year, and it just like
ugh,
falls into like digital digital black hole out of which it
unless
can
it's
never
Doctor Who.
emerge. Yeah. So like if you don't want to use it yourself, BBC, at least let Disney or whoever stream
Yeah.
it properly in the UK. Yeah, really liked the Guy Pearce one. The Rod Serling one, it was an interesting little period piece, but it felt too much like being lectured at to be enjoyable. Really, it's a stacked cast as well. There's Brett
Yeah.
Eklund, there's Peter Sellers, there's
I
Robert
mean, yeah, both
Shaw.
of them stacked casts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was a really interesting like bit of mid 1960s
Time
Americana,
capsule.
but
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it felt like being lectured at for an hour and a half.
Okay, that's fair. um yeah, I mean, okay, so both of these got mixed reactions, and I definitely understand why in both cases, for different but not dissimilar reasons. Both of are obviously seen as quite like dark and somber. Um, I would say, yeah, the FX one, as you said before, it is definitely more the closer adaptation. We could have put it under classics. It's the same story, but it is intentionally done in a different way. Like it feels like they take great pains at many points to avoid hitting the usual beats of
Yes.
these adaptations. So it's the same story, but then like we're not going to say that line, that sort of.
No,
um,
the carolers at no point do the carolers enter Scrooge's office and start singing "God rest you, very gentlemen."
the carolers did sing a song, but like they sang a song that no other adaptation has ever used, and I have never even heard of. I don't even know the name of it. I was just like,
Yeah,
fine, I'm sure it's historically accurate. Yeah, but then the 1964 one, it's really like only the foggiest outline of the story persists. And as you said, it's not subtle. No, it's not subtle. I'm not going to claim that. But it is very much an interesting historical relic. I think it's interesting to put them both side to side because, like, the FX one is more about the individual forces shaping a man. That one delves a lot more into psychology and sociology, whereas the UN is about the collective forces, which are influenced by individuals, but it's really about the collective whole that shapes society,
yeah,
about thinking about the bigger picture.
that's a really good way of putting the distinction, and I think it completely it changes the moral of the story. It
Hmm.
changes the moral of the story somewhat, but
Yeah.
we'll come back to that.
Yeah, and I think so I recently was a guest on Nevermind the Music, and we talked about hope punk, the concept of hope punk, which we kind of posited as the opposite of grimdark. I'm actually going to link that episode in the show notes in case people are interested in a deeper idea of hope punk. But I feel like FX is grimdark. Do you know? Does that mean something to you? The word
Yeah.
grimdark? Yeah,
Well,
like
no, I kind of get what you're saying, but no, not the exact
it's
terminology.
like it's a literary term about, for example, Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire. That is a massive example of grimdark, where there's a pessimistic aspect to it. Although, I mean, I will say the FX one does, come around to hope in the end.
Yeah, yeah,
A little bit,
a
tiny
little
bit,
bit, a little
less
bit.
than usual for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. Whereas the UN one is more like, let's all pull together, and it doesn't mean that things will immediately be okay, but as long as as long as we're talking, we're not fighting.
yes,
Yeah. um but anyway, if anyone's more interested in that concept, there's that link in the show notes. Definitely recommend Nevermind the Music for a combination of psychology and music exploration. Did you notice, by the way, I saw people complaining online that the FX one had F bombs in it. And I have to say, I only noticed one of them because it
yeah.
made me laugh.
I only noticed the one F bomb.
Yeah. Okay. So, where are we thinking of the same thing when he's talking about Lottie with the gun?
Yes, yes. That was the only one I noticed.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe people are just being hysterical. It did strike me. It made me laugh. So I didn't mind it at all. But it did strike me like, okay, maybe that's a little anachronistic.
Oh, maybe when his dad turns up and kills the mouse.
Hmm.
I think there might be one. I think there might be one there
I was
as
probably
well.
screaming worse things in my head at that moment, so yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, just to before we get into the lore down, a little background on each of them. FX is A Christmas Carol. It came out in 2019. It was a co-production between FX and the BBC. So it aired. They dropped all three. There was three episodes. We watched it, or at least I watched it combined as a 3 hour movie. You said you
Yeah, I
didn't watch
did.
it. Yeah, okay. That's how Disney Plus has it combined as a 3 hour movie, but it was three chapters. Chapter one, The Human Beast. Chapter two, The Human Heart. And chapter three, A Bag of Gravel. And so it's split after, I mean, more similar to the book, is split after Marley's visit and just before the first ghost arrives. Then the first ghost gets like an entire episode. And then the last episode is the other two ghosts in the conclusion. So FX dropped all three at once on December 19th, 2019, and BBC did one episode a day between the 22nd and the 24th. And yeah, I was while I was watching because I watched it on Disney Plus and it's called FX's A Christmas Carol. And I started watching. I was like, "This feels so BBC," and then I realized, "Oh, it is.
It is. It is. That's because
It
it is.
actually really is." Um, But yeah, this one it was directed by Nick Murphy, which it's not a name I'm really familiar with, but it was written by Stephen Knight. Are you familiar with Stephen Knight?
So Stephen Knight is the guy that wrote Peaky Blinders,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he was also involved. He was one of the writers on the Christopher Nolan Batman
Okay.
as well. I think.
I mean, he's got a massive career. He's one of the three creators of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire randomly. Indeed, yeah, the creator of Peaky Blinders, and he also wrote screenplays for films like Closed Circuit, Dirty Pretty Things, and Eastern Promises, um, and Serenity. So, oh, and he's going to be doing the next Bond movie that's going to be directed by
Yes.
Villeneuve.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, big name. And yeah, Tom Hardy and Ridley Scott were the executive producers. And apparently Tom Hardy was going to appear. They never announced what role, and then he just didn't show up. So okay.
I'm gonna guess Marley. I'm gonna get.
You think?
Yeah, I'm gonna say Marley. He would have been he would have been miscast as Scrooge, but
I
I
mean,
could
I don't know.
see
He would have been kind
Marley.
of miscast as Marley too. But yeah.
Yeah,
I I'm glad that it was Stephen Graham.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Stephen Graham is awesome in this.
Yeah. There was another actor that was lost from the production. Rutger Hauer. He was cast as Christmas Future, but he ended up being too ill to film, and then he ultimately passed away from pancreatic cancer before the show was released. So that's really sad.
Oh,
Major Dutch actor, well, people know him from Blade Runner and a million other things. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, But yeah, the like I said, the reaction to this was mixed, where episode one was apparently the most watched TV show for that entire week in the UK. But then viewing numbers plummeted over the 3 days that followed. Like there was on the US side, I think, or maybe it was the UK side, there was a 30% fall off after the first. And then, yeah, people were just not vibing with it. I think it was much darker than they expected.
yeah. You can kind of see why, because it's probably, if you want like a modern adaptation, you're not gonna get that.
Hmm.
If you want a straight retelling of book, you're not gonna get that. If you want some kind of like spin on the book, like I can see how how it might fall between several stools,
Hmm.
because it's not a traditional adaptation, but on the other hand, it's not a radical departure either. It kind of falls somewhere between the two.
Yeah, I would say what I think makes this stand out and makes it its own thing apart from all the other adaptations is that this one leans more into psychological profiling, I suppose.
Yes, and I mean, and also I really like the way Guy Pearce plays Scrooge.
Mhm.
In that you see him as this. You see him for what I think Scrooge is, for what Dickens implies that Scrooge is in the book, which is is a broken man. You know, like you say, it's it's a study of his psychology, and I think Pierce sort of does a really good job of portraying like internalized pain and
Mhm.
internalized trauma.
Mm.
And also, I think it's just there's just something quite cool about a slightly younger version of Scrooge.
Yeah.
Sort
Yeah.
of a late middle aged version of Scrooge rather than an old version of Scrooge, because frankly, it gives him a bit more time to be redeemed, basically. And also, I like the fact that Steve Graham as Marley has like a much expanded role in this. He's
Right.
almost like the Greek chorus
Mhm.
in the background of the entire story. And A, Stephen Graham is just very watchable. But B,
Mhm.
I like the fact you know more about Marley's character at the end of it. And like Marley is going on his own little journey parallel with
Mhm.
Scrooge, and I think that's really cool.
Um, yeah, it's interesting that so we're gonna obviously get into the whole Scrooge. That's a whole category about Scrooge, and we've got a whole category about Marley. So we're going to get into that more. But it is interesting. Both are younger, in both versions. So also in Carol for Another Christmas, they well, we'll get into exactly how young Marley is, but it's interesting that Carol for Another Christmas, we talked about this darkness and about maybe people being turned off by that with the FX BBC version. This one was released on December 28th, 1964. So after Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's, which is an interesting time to release it, I think. It's saying this, and it's true. Like, even in there's no real mention of Christmas other than Fred's going to church, right?
They do mention that it's Christmas Eve because that's why Fred is
Mhm.
going to church.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that's all.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Carol for Another Christmas was a black and white TV special, but it is feature length. It's 84 minutes long, so a nice short tidy feature. But it has a really rich pedigree. It was written by Rod Serling of Twilight Zone fame, and this actually came out later the year after Twilight Zone ended. And Rod Serling, considering we're going to get into the situation in which this was written, but he was known throughout Hollywood as the quote unquote angry young man because of his activism, and he would often butt heads with people over um, yeah, things not being done ethically, as he saw. And he is someone who he enlisted in the military because the military is obviously also very relevant to the story. He enlisted in the military the day after his high school graduation. And he really went through the ringer there. You know, he witnessed the death of his comrades. He received injuries himself that would bother him for the rest of his life. He received medals. And his final assignment was to be part of the occupation force in Japan after the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. So that's also why you'll see that reflected in here. And he left duty in 1946 and then worked at a rehabilitation hospital while he himself healed. And to quote this, so Serling's combat experience affected him deeply and influenced much of his writing. It left him with nightmares and flashbacks for the rest of his life. He said, I was bitter about everything and at loose ends when I got out of service. I think I turned to writing to get it off my chest.
Well, he certainly gets a lot off his chest
Yeah.
in Carol for Another Christmas.
Yeah. Well, so that's all what's feeding into this. And apparently his background is after that, he went to physical education school. You know, he's going to be like a phys ed teacher, I guess. But then he got involved in the campus radio station, and that's the direction he went. He eventually became most known for The Twilight Zone, which ran 1959 to 1964, and then this film was made.
Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo.
Doo-doo-doo-doo. Yeah. Are you familiar? Okay, first let me ask, a lot of reviewers online compare this movie to The Twilight Zone. Did you get a
Yeah, I
Twilight
mean
Zone?
this could have been a Twilight Zone special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well.
I mean, yeah, it just could have been. So, yeah, it felt very. I mean, I've only watched a couple of episodes of the original Twilight Zone. I don't know it well, but I know enough of it to know the oeuvre of it, the tone of it.
Mhm. Okay, okay. And are you familiar with the film's director, Joseph L. Mankiewicz?
I recognize the name, but I don't know where I recognize it from.
So he was is known as an actor's director. So which I like. My favorites are the actor's director. He's originally from Wilkes-Barre, which is where my Welsh side of my family's from. He grew up in New York City and he lived in Europe, in Germany specifically, for a while during the Weimar Republic. Do you want to say what the Weimar Republic is?
So the Weimar Republic was the German state between 1918 and 1933. The sort of brief experiment in democracy between the end of the fall of the Kaiser Reich and the rise of Hitler. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
And it was known as it was a time when arts flourished in Germany in particular too. We see a lot of great film and there apparently were a lot of great parties.
yes, yeah, apparently.
I always think like if I had to be sent back to that time, I would hang out in Berlin until about until about like 33, and then as soon as the prohibition lifted in the US, I would zoom
Yeah.
into New York City. But he did the same, or he went to LA rather. His brother is actually Herman Mankiewicz, who is a writer who's written, such little known films as Citizen Kane. Might you have heard of it? Um, so it's his brother. If you're wondering about the last name, his brother is the one who's the subject of the 2020 film Mank.
Okay.
He was sort of an infamous figure in Hollywood, but Joseph L. Mankiewicz, his directorial debut was Dragonwyck, which came out in 1946, and I was just recently talking about it on a Lorehound subscriber episode because, I watched it recently as part of my gothic 40s, 30s, 40s movies deep dive. Um, Joseph won 4 Oscars, including 2 for probably his most famous film, All About Eve from 1950. Are you familiar with that one?
I know the title, but only because I've heard it referenced in other stuff.
Yeah. It's one of my favorites. It's one of the absolute classics, classic explorations of mental health and the feminine psyche in general. Um, but he also was known for Guys and Dolls from 1955. He took over the disastrous Cleopatra in 1963.
That's where I know him from.
Okay. Guys and Dolls?
No,
Oh,
Cleopatra.
Cleopatra. Okay. Yeah. And so the Carol for Another Christmas was towards the end of his career. I think he only did like 4 or 5 movies after this. But this was the first in a series of UN TV specials sponsored by Xerox, which aired on ABC. We'll get back to that part. There were 6 planned, 4 were broadcast. There was this one. Then there was Who Has Seen the Wind in February of 1965, which was about refugees. There was Once Upon a Tractor in September 1965 about farming. There was The Poppy is Also a Flower in April of 1966 about opium slash heroin. And apparently, this was Ian Fleming's final story that he wrote before he passed away.
Okay.
And there was supposed to be 2 more, and production was started on the 5th, called The Kashmir Story. Um, it was going to be focused on peacekeeping efforts along the India-Pakistan border, but production was postponed because there was conflict going on along the border, and then it just eventually never happened. And I'm part of the reason the last 2 never happened is they were going to split these UN specials across the 3 major networks in the US. So ABC, obviously, but then CBS withdrew their support because they were afraid of political backlash because of the political content. And then NBC, they wanted to extensively censor these for the same reason. So they just ended up airing 4 of them on ABC, and that was that.
Okay.
So yeah, this aired in 1964 and then was not officially aired again until Turner Classic Movies aired it 48 years later in 2012. But now Turner Classic Movies re-airs it annually, TCM, and it's available on DVD and elsewhere,
Cool.
and apparently YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I should say, and apparently elsewhere, YouTube. um, But yeah, I'll say that it did get recognition. It had mixed reviews, but at the 17th Primetime Emmy Awards, it did get 2 nominations for Outstanding Program Achievements in Entertainment for Joseph L. Mankiewicz and ABC, and for Art Direction and Scenic Design, but it didn't win either category.
Okay.
Do you have any, before we get into, we're going to take a quick break and go into our lore down, but do you have any final thoughts? Like, if someone's gotten this far and they have not watched either of them, would you recommend either or both?
I would definitely recommend the FX one. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was a really original take on A Christmas Carol. I have problems with the UN special in terms of what it does to the moral of the story, and also,
Mm-hmm.
like I say, it felt like being lectured at very earnestly for
Mm,
an hour and 20 minutes.
mm. I do. For me, both of these have middle plus ratings. So I gave the FX one a 3 out of 5, and I gave the UN one a 3.5 out of 5. Um, I have, yeah, I have mixed feelings about both of them. We'll talk through them after this with full spoilers. I mean, again, how do you really spoil a Christmas Carol? Even
It's
these twists.
150 years old, people.
um, but yeah, I guess I am slightly more interested in the UN one because I think it's just such an interesting time capsule.
Yes.
Oh, did I mention, by the way? Yeah. That of course the FX one is twice as long, so that's something to keep in mind too. But we will, okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we will, when we come back, we're going to begin the lore down. There will be 6 categories, and we will declare an ultimate dark carol. Welcome back, and prepare for the lore down. So we're going to put these 2 films head to head, category by category. I'm going to be in each case listing the FX attribute first, and the UN one second, and then we'll discuss, and then we'll choose a category winner and move on. Starting with category 1, ding ding, the setting. So we have classic Dickens 2019 versus Cold War America 1964. Um, Now, what is your overall feeling on these two before we get into the details?
What, just in terms of the setting?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the FX one is obviously very traditional, you know, Dickensian London, or Dickensian England, I should say, because I think there are a couple of bits and pieces that take place outside of London. Um, yeah, the Carol for Another Christmas one. I mean, is it set in? I mean, I know it's shown in 1964, but is it set in 1964? I just thought it was set
For sure.
in
Yeah,
the
because they make direct reference to it being the aftermath of World War II, basically. So
yeah, they
maybe
did.
even said a little before that, if anything.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It felt to me like it was probably a little bit late 1950s, if anything.
Mm, okay. Yeah, I think the FX one has gorgeous production design. It has that dark gray filter that was especially popular during the 2010s, but it's still like the details and the richness of the production design and the costumes and everything are really set you in place. I never doubted for a second it was taking place where it was. You know what I mean? It never looked staged or
Yeah.
fake.
And actually, I think that kind of grayed out filter. I know what you mean
Added to the mood. Yeah.
about it being ubiquitous, but it did actually work in this setting because it gave you
Hmm.
that kind of very smoky industrial
Right.
look to everything, that kind of grimy, sort of sooty look to everything, which is appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely really echoed or cast the mood well. Yeah. Um, I think in terms of like the setting as a historical settings, I think it's interesting that the 2019 one gives us more details of Scrooge's work than most businesses.
Yes, like Scrooge and Marley were
Like VOC,
what
basically.
were asset strippers. Yeah,
Uh,
they were building an industrial conglomerate.
right.
So yeah, they're into calico. They're into, I think, making. They got a pin making factory.
They were
There's
trading in spices.
spices. Seemed like
They
an
had the
iron.
cotton mill that they took over and then they just like stripped it for parts and sold it.
Yeah, like an iron. I think there's an iron. The scene where the factory explodes. I think that's like supposed to
Uh-huh.
be an ironmonger's.
Right, there's the miners.
Yeah,
So yeah, we're always talking about whether or not they show the miners that they talk about in
yeah.
the
They
books.
showed a set of miners.
I mean, they showed them, but usually in the thing in the book is like even the miners are jolly on Christmas, and he was like the miners are like blowing explosion, everybody's dying.
And also, all everybody seems to care about is the bleeding horses.
No, they understand. They understand me. They understand that I would care about the horses more than the humans. Like, why? Why are the horses dying? Scrooge, even that's what got him. Before
Yeah,
Tiny Tim, he cared about the horse. um, and yeah, and the carolers we talked about singing some random carol. I know. So okay, if we look at the setting of the UN one, 1964, maybe set before that in the 50s. I think you might be right. So I like how they handle the fact that clearly had a smaller budget, and they handled it in a typical Twilight Zone way where it is in some ways like a stage production, but they use it like an asset rather than a liability. Like, look, this is stylistic.
yeah. The bit with the ghost of Christmas present. It's like we are very obviously on a soundstage, but also it doesn't matter because it's kind of supposed to look that way.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, and I thought it was clever. For example, they didn't obviously have the money to do like the scene setting shots, so they did these really elaborate hand drawn, I don't know if they're pencil or charcoal drawings to introduce the setting. So that was a lovely way to set it up. And then once you got inside, they probably just took over some mansion that already existed. It was a bit lavish for Scrooge, but it looked nice.
yeah.
Like
It
it
did.
also, like visually, the whole thing, the black and white, it's been well preserved. It looks great.
Yeah, and also like the character is not like the character is inspired by Ebenezer Scrooge, but it's not Ebenezer Scrooge.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
not only is the name different, but like you say, the motivation is different. And his sort of relationship to his own money is different as well.
Yeah.
Like he lives in quite a sort of grand fashion.
Hmm.
Although,
Yeah.
like, he's only this is the thing because I think this is important later. He's not like a billionaire. He's just moderately rich.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he does live in a massive mansion and have servants. So
We only got
only
only
two
two
we saw,
servants.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's I don't you know what? You know who did not grow up with servants? Me. Um, yeah, no, I mean, I suppose he's not the most wealthy, but he does live, a very privileged life, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
and also it has that 50s 60s thing of two men are talking, therefore hard alcohol must be consumed.
At least by one of them.
But at least by one of them, yeah. Two men cannot have a conversation without somebody drinking liquor.
Listen, don't come at my wasp upbringing, she says and takes a sip of wine. No. Okay, so here's where I'm going to unleash you a little bit. Uh, we have to talk about the setting.
Yeah,
It is an explicitly Cold War setting. And in order to understand the visions that we're going to talk about later, we need to understand the situation in history at the moment at which this is released. And so we'll just say this is, again, it came out in 1964. And this is shortly after the 1962 missile crisis. So shout out to it. Welcome to Derry, where we are also coincidentally talking because it Welcome to Derry set in 1962 and is very much about the Cold War and the missile crisis. So, yeah, Luke, do you want to just set up quickly for
Okay,
anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking
so
about?
the very very short version of the Cuban Missile Crisis is Fidel Castro leads a communist revolution in Cuba. Um, the United actually, I'm listening to a book at the moment about the history of diplomacy between the United States and Cuba between
Okay.
1962 and the present day. But anyway, Fidel Castro leads a revolution in Cuba, overthrows a close U.S. ally, is the head of a very left wing government, if not a communist government at the outset, nationalizes a bunch of American owned companies. If anybody's seen The Godfather Part 2, where they're nationalizing the casinos, that is all part of that.
Hmm.
Um, the CIA, under the Eisenhower administration and then under the Kennedy administration, tries to overthrow Castro by subversion, crop burning, psychological warfare, but it also backs Cuban exiles in Miami to stage an invasion of Cuba, the infamous Bay of Pigs. It fails, that invasion fails. Castro then asks the Soviet Union for assistance in defending Cuba. The Soviets are really annoyed that the US has intermediate range ballistic missiles in Western Europe, specifically Turkey, Italy, and the United Kingdom. Khrushchev famously says this is an opportunity to put a hedgehog down Kennedy's pants. Now, there's an image. So, the Soviet Union sends intermediate range missiles to Cuba. The US had said repeatedly that it wouldn't accept the basing of Soviet missiles in Cuba, and so there is a diplomatic and military crisis that almost results in World War III. In
Right.
the end, it's resolved when both sides withdraw their missiles, and the US issues a pledge not to invade Cuba.
The amazing thing to me about that is the very end there that you said about there's a point where both sides are being told to launch their
Yes.
missiles. And there were two different people on both sides who said, "Wait a minute." Just took a step back. They kind of weren't defying orders, right? But they just said, "I think they're not actually launching at us. Let's take a beat." And basically prevented nuclear war because and I think that's something that's directly referenced later, but I don't do you wanna correct what I said at all?
No, no, no. Just to add to that, if people are interested, there's a really good movie from I think 2001 called 13 Days,
Mm,
based on a book of the same title. 13 Days the movie does take a bit of liberty in the sense that it massively contracts the number of characters
right.
involved to make it manageable. But other than that, it's pretty historically accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think about this Cuban Missile Crisis all the time just as this moment where, if people just blindly followed orders, nuclear war would have begun and life as we know it would have ended. But there were just happened to be one person on each side in the right position to say, "Let's take a breath and think."
Yeah, but there are dozens of
Right.
incidents like that across the cold.
Right, true.
My favorite one is, have you ever heard of a guy called Stanislav Petrov?
It sounds familiar.
Okay, Stanislav Petrov is a colonel in the Soviet Strategic Rocket Forces, so i.e. the nuclear arsenal of the Soviet Union.
Mhm.
And his job is to man an early warning radar post in Moscow. And it's New Year's Eve 1986. Petrov and his wife have just had their first child. So he trades shifts with a friend because he can't go out and celebrate New Year's. The friend wants to go out and celebrate New Year's, and Petrov wants the extra money. So he's sitting there in his bunker at like 3 in the morning with his sandwich and his thermos of coffee, and all of a sudden, wow, 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 the alarm goes
Mhm.
off. And and the computer shows that a single US missile has been launched. at the Soviet Union. And Petrov thinks that's weird because if the US was about to attack the Soviet Union, it wouldn't launch its missiles one at a time. So he ignores it, which is against all his training because a missile launched in the continental United States will reach the Soviet Union in 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So his job, his standing order, is to alert his chain of command that the Soviet Union can get its own missiles in the air before they're destroyed on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So Petrov ignores it, waits a few more minutes, alarm goes off again. Wow. Another missile's been launched.
Ugh.
Petrov ignores it for the same reason. And he's defying not only his orders, but everything he's been trained to do since he was 20. Waits another couple of minutes, the alarm goes off for a third time. He ignores it again. And what had happened is that the heat sensor on the Soviet early warning satellite had malfunctioned, so it read sunrise over Nebraska as the heat plume of a missile launch.
Uh-huh.
But guess what happens to Petrov?
What?
Rather than being fated as a hero, he is court-martialed,
Oh.
dismissed from the Soviet rocket forces, has half his pension taken away. His wife subsequently leaves him,
Oh my
and
God.
there's a really sad interview in The Guardian, and I think about 2017, where he's in this tiny little flat in Moscow, because he's only living off half his pension,
Mm-hmm.
and basically, hasn't seen his kids for ages, hasn't seen his wife for ages, because he disobeyed his orders.
Mm-hmm. Thank all the gods he did, right?
It's not his job to work out what was going on. It was his job to pick up the phone.
Right. And this is why I am not a fan of blind obedience. Okay, well, so that all happened, or I mean, I don't know when did the Petrov thing happen? I mean, the Cuban.
1986, like I say, it was New Year's Eve
Oh, 1986. Okay,
1986.
so later. But the Cuban Missile Crisis part happened in 1962. And then 2 years later, the same year that this started, in addition to the whole Cold War situation, I had to look up where were we with the Vietnam War. And then I asked you, Luke, do you know anything about the Gulf of Tonkin incident in August of 1964? Because that seems important to this film. So, and you
And
said, oh, wait.
yeah. Oh, you're going to regret asking me this question. Why are you going to regret asking me this question? Because the first book I wrote and published was looking at the lessons that the US Armed Forces drew from Vietnam. So I was basically immersed in the Vietnam War for 5 years. By the way, the US foreign policy and the Powell Doctrine available from all good stockists. If anybody's looking for a last minute stocking filler.
Oh, we'll put a link in the show notes.
Okay. So the Gulf of Tonkin. So this is, where do I start? The U.S. Where do I start? Okay, so Vietnam is divided between North and South Vietnam. Communist North
Mhm.
Vietnam, non-communist South Vietnam. In 1954, after the French are forced to withdraw from Vietnam because Vietnam had been a French colony, the country is divided, but it's only supposed to be temporarily divided. The idea is that in 1956 there are going to be national elections to elect a unified Vietnamese government. The US doesn't sign the agreement in Geneva establishing this, so what happens instead is that there are separate communist and non-communist governments formed North and South. By 1964, there is an insurgency in South Vietnam, guided, supplied, armed by the North Vietnamese government. The United States sends troops in as advisors to the South Vietnamese army. At the same time, the CIA is helping the South Vietnamese run a collection of sabotage and covert action programs against North Vietnam under the code name of 34A. So this involves basically fast motorboats landing commandos on the North Vietnamese coast.
Okay.
At the same time, the US is the US is running intelligence operations in international waters in the Gulf of Tonkin, which is the piece of water that is right next to North Vietnam. So one of the ships running these intelligence operations is a destroyer called the USS Maddox. The Maddox is attacked by North Vietnamese patrol boats. It's attacked because the patrol boats mistake the Maddox for one of these ships that's been one of the South Vietnamese ships that's been running these covert action hit and run commando raids. The Maddox defends itself. It sees off the Vietnamese motorboat. Lyndon Johnson, as president, is advised by his advisors to retaliate with airstrikes against North Vietnam at that point. Johnson says no because he understands the mistake that the North Vietnamese have made.
Mm-hmm.
But he's in the middle of an election campaign. He doesn't want to look weak.
Mm.
So rather than pull the Maddox out, he actually sends another destroyer into the Gulf of Tonkin called the Sea Turner Joy.
This is called doubling down.
This is called doubling down. And the Maddox then reports that it's coming under attack by the North Vietnamese again. This time there are no 34A raids in progress. But it turns out that second attack never happened.
Mm.
It was a combination of bad weather and very nervous radar operators.
Mm-hmm.
But the Americans think it has happened. And Johnson also wants legislative cover for US activities in Vietnam because
But can I just say also that the Americans think it has happened is a theme that also connects to the whole Cuban Missile
it
Crisis. But
does,
anyway, yeah.
yeah. So Lyndon Johnson also wants legislative cover for what's going on in Vietnam because, again, he's in the middle of an election campaign. The war is not going very well. And he remembers what happened to Harry Truman when Truman sent troops to Korea without getting Congress involved.
Mm.
So there's been a piece of legislation sitting in a drawer in the White House for several months, which would basically give the president carte blanche to
Mm-hmm.
use military force in Southeast Asia.
Mm.
And as a result of this alleged attack, the US does launch airstrikes against North Vietnam
Mm-hmm.
in quote unquote retaliation. At the same time, what comes to be known as the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution is passed through Congress unanimously in the House of Representatives and with only 2 votes against in the
Mm-hmm.
Senate. One was Wayne Morse, the other was Ernest Grunig. So Wayne Morse is from Oregon, Ernest Grunig is from Alaska. Can you tell I had to commit that to memory? So, and the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution is really important because it is the legal cover and justification for everything that happens in Vietnam up until 1973. It's essentially the equivalent of a declaration of war, and many historians date some historians date the Second Vietnam War as starting from that
Mm.
point.
So yeah, this is the point where we're at. We have we're in the aftermath of World War II, which of course evolved in many ways into the Cold War, and we have the Vietnam War meanwhile heating up at the same time this very year that this film is released. And I'll say this is the same year, at the beginning of this year, Doctor Strangelove was released as well, another infamous famous beloved anti-war film, and it shares 2 key actors with this, so we're going to bring it up again.
It's another Peter Sellers film.
Oh yeah. We're going to bring it shares
Yeah.
the 2 key actors with this, so we're going to talk about it again. But what would you say is the general feeling in the US and more broadly about the UN at this moment in time? About the
Um.
United Nations, in case anyone out
Yeah.
there doesn't know
I
what
mean,
we mean.
that's an interesting question. I mean, Barry Goldwater in 1964 runs as runs as a very hardline Cold Warrior, got no time for the UN, and I do see a lot of I see a lot of the caricature of Barry Goldwater in the main character for
Mhm.
of this film. Um, I wouldn't say the problem is this is at the point in history where the UN is going from a reliably pro-American organization, because when it had been set up, the UN is overwhelmingly focused on Europe and South America in terms of its membership.
Mhm.
So this is in the middle of the period of decolonization. So new members are being added to the UN rapidly.
Mhm.
So
And they don't all love America?
yeah, in the late 1940s, early 1950s, attitudes towards the UN had been very positive.
Mhm.
They are less positive at this point. I still think they're more positive than what they would be now, to be honest.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
That's sad. Maybe they need to make some more UN Christmas movies. All right. So that sets up the background of both of these, the both from the production design and also the historical settings in which they find themselves. Which do you think wins round one? Classic Dickens from 2019 or Cold War America from 1964?
I'm going to say Cold War from 1964 because I do think it's a really it's a like it is so of its time. It's so
Mhm.
of its time. It's so of that particular moment that it hurts because it's not the height of the Cold War in the 1950s, but the it's not the counterculture of the late 1960s and early 1970s
Mm.
either. It feels like it's balanced on a tipping point in popular culture that really only existed for about a year and a half.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go with you on that. Like, and that's not in any way to belittle the BBC one, because, as I said, the production design was especially for. I mean, it was definitely. I'll say the production design, not to shade the BBC, but it was more toward the FX end. Um, and I also, like I said, I really appreciate the way that they leaned more into what Scrooge actually does and all the various insidious details of his business and how he's ruining people. So I appreciate all that, but I think the reason why I slightly lean toward the UN one in general is precisely for the reason of this category, that it is, as you say, such an interesting and specific time capsule. And also, yeah, just the way it's been encapsulated by, we talked a bit about the writer and director behind it. We'll talk more about the cast too. And starting with the central curmudgeon. So we have, on the one hand, Ebenezer Scrooge, played by Guy Pearce in the 2019 version, and Daniel Grudge, played by Sterling Hayden in the 1964 version. So let's start with Guy Pearce. What did you think of his portrayal?
I really like Guy Pearce's portrayal of Scrooge. Guy Pearce does a very good job of showing internalized pain.
Hmm.
Um, and that's a very difficult thing to do, but really does encapsulate that sort of solitary, I think closed as an oyster is the way Dickens puts it. Um, and he does it by being like he does it by being very formal, very correct towards Cratchit, but ice cold as well. And I do like that. There's a bit at the beginning where he's literally counting out the pieces of coal, and he
Hmm.
scolds himself on his liberality because he gives him 4 pieces of coal rather than
Right.
3. Um, and I like that. I like that little bit of detail. And
Hmm.
there's something about Guy Pearce's face as well. He's very sort of sallow and sunk
Hmm.
cheeked. Like if you were to ask me what does Ebenezer Scrooge look like, it would be Guy. It would be, and I'm not saying this is shade on Guy Pearce, but it would be Guy Pearce. He's got that pinched sort of slightly sallow sort of complexion.
Hmm. I think it's interesting what you say about the coal thing because also that is a point where there is like complexity and nuance in the approach of his relationship with where there's like a part of him, he gives that extra piece of coal and it's like almost like part of him wants to be nice. And then when Cratchit comes in and he's like, "Oh, you have 4 pieces of coal, so you want me to work an extra hour?" He's like, "Yes, it's because I want you to work an extra hour." Like he can't, and he's like, and I curse me for being nice.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I would say I'm not going to say much about who Guy Pearce is as an actor because I think most people are familiar with him. But it is interesting that he is like, people have called him the hot Scrooge. He's younger. We've seen younger actors before, but they've always played decrepit old men who are, um, like walking with a cane and just like looking very elderly. If it's a younger actor, they age them up. And here you just have he's just a middle-aged man playing a middle-aged man who
Yeah.
just yeah. Um he's not he doesn't seem as aged. And also Marley's younger too, but we'll get to that. Um
But then
I think
again, these are guys in the 1840s, so life expectancy is a good deal lower. So I don't
right.
think you would call them old, but they are older in context.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem like he has arthritis yet or anything like that.
No, he's quite sort of spry and sprightly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we get a much darker look at his psyche. Like this is the version that goes the deepest into creating a dark background for him. We have you mentioned the whole pet Erasmus the mouse thing. His father killed the mouse that his sister gave him, which obviously upset me. And it also upset me when he threw the vision of the mouse out the window. Like not cool. But yeah, so we have like his pets literally being killed by his abusive father, and then his abusive father is even complicit in like selling renting him out to the schoolmaster who's sexually abusing him over breaks. Like, whoa,
Yeah,
this
I'm gonna
is
say this is really dark.
yeah. Yeah. um, but then they add to that he seems to be probably neurodivergent, probably has an anxiety disorder. We see him having like he identifies with statistics more than anything else. He's constantly counting like the steps people take or the number of calls that are being made on the streets. And yeah, but he does, by the way, he leaves the coins on Marley's eyes. I'll give him credit for that because we were just talking about when was that? Which one was that? That
The
was
Jim
the
Carrey one where he takes the coin.
yeah.
Tuppence is tuppence.
But he seems to be an atheist in this one. Do you think that fits Scrooge being an atheist?
Yeah, I think that fits Scrooge. I think it's also to do with the. I think it's also to do with the time in which it's made. Because I think that the original novella is as close to being atheistic as you could be if you wanted to sell books in the
Mm.
1840s. It really
Mhm.
does play down the
Right.
religious aspect of Christmas.
Infamously so, yeah.
Yeah. So I think I think the atheism is very much in the spirit of the book, if not in the letter of the text.
Mhm. Yeah, and we see definitely this focuses on like why is he such a miserable bastard and I mean, good
He's got his
lord.
reasons.
Yeah, good lord. But he sees Christmas as the day of the human beast, he calls humans faking goodness. But then it is interesting because at the same time he's noting that the rag and bone man who comes collecting rag and bone men were like a real thing. They would collect donations basically for, as physical donations like
Anything
household
people didn't need, just
yeah,
scrap.
yeah. Like clothing, household objects, things like that. Um, but he notes that the rag and bone man comes every few days all year round, except for I forget when did he say like I don't know,
Sometime
he
in
takes like a
July, this is
right.
about 12 days in July.
Right. He takes a vacation every year, but he comes the rest of the year. So that is an argument against his whole Christmas only is one day of goodness, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I also think it's interesting, and they didn't lean into this as much as I expected from the beginning, and I wish they had. But the fact that we see Scrooge missing Marley at the beginning, where he's talking to his empty chair, because oh yeah, that is interesting that they've said so. They have this in 1843 is when it's supposed to be set, but then Marley only died the year before. It seems like I have some
Yes, I think
questions about
so.
this later, but that's the number. His on his gravestone it says 1842.
Yeah, and we'll talk about how we know what it says on his gravestone.
Right. Yeah, no, I've some questions about that. But anyway, but we see Scrooge legitimately mourning Marley, which we sometimes see, but I kind of wish they had gone done more with that in this.
Well, I've ever told you my friend Simon's theory on Scrooge.
I think so, but tell me again.
Well, Simon's whole theory is that Scrooge and Marley are actually like in a repressed homosexual relationship,
Right.
and that's why they're so miserable because they won't acknowledge.
Okay. No, I mean, yeah, that certainly applies to one of these, to the other one, no.
Yeah,
um Yeah, and I'll just say, we talked about them avoiding the classic book lines, but they did finally give Scrooge the like. You can't have Scrooge and not have are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses?
Also, I like the way they did the conversation with nephew Fred as well, because Fred's like, "This is the last time I'm going to do this."
Yeah. Oh,
'Cause-
Fred has his own. Well, there's a category dedicated to friends and family.
oh, okay.
But yeah, and I also the one last thing that I have about Scrooge is that it's interesting how they dive into and call him out on the fact that he is initially intellectualizing everything he sees. Like he keeps making excuses for himself, justifying his behavior, like he's looking for free passes to forgiveness. And the movie is saying that yes, these horrible things happen to you, but you're the one who closed your eyes to the goodness around you, and you're the one who's going to pay for that if you don't open your heart.
Yeah.
Any more thoughts on the Guy Pearce side?
No.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about Sterling Hayden plays not Scrooge, but he plays Daniel Grudge, which, all right, Grudge obviously kind of sounds like Scrooge, but clearly they want us to think about Grudge. Now, one thing is, we'll talk about it more in a minute because that's the next category is Marley, but we find out his son died at war, so maybe he's holding a grudge there. Do you think there's like a bigger, like the U.S. is holding a grudge
No,
against
no, no.
someone?
I think this is a classic. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar,
Okay.
kind of thing. I think he is the one. He is the one holding he is the one holding the grudge.
Okay, okay. Well, just to talk about the actor himself for a minute, are you familiar with Sterling Hayden at all?
Only from Doctor Strangelove.
Okay, okay. Well, he was known primarily as a leading man in westerns and film noir, like The Asphalt Jungle or Stanley Kubrick's The Killing. Um, and yeah, he did play the same year this came out, as we said, 1964. He played General Jack D. Ripper, the paranoid commander of the Burleson Air Force Base in Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Which, I mean, we're not explaining this movie, but I'm assuming most people have heard of it.
Yeah, and if you haven't heard of Doctor Strangelove, go and treat yourself. Pause this podcast and go and watch it because it is one of the best black comedies ever
Hmm.
made. It is very. I always love the fact that Kubrick originally wanted to make a drama and
Mm,
then did the research and decided that the only way to tackle the subject was as black farce.
yeah. I mean, yeah, so it's a black and white considered artistic masterpiece, but also yeah, considered one of the greatest satires of all time, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm. But I would say modern audiences might know Sterling Hayden best as the Irish American policeman Captain McCluskey in The Godfather.
Oh, is that him?
Uh huh. Later, after this, yeah.
Okay.
But he he in his pre-acting career, he fought in World War II under he fought under well, he was already it wasn't pre-acting. He was already famous. And so when he went to war, he well, first of all, he was medically discharged, and then he went back in. He was very insistent. He wanted to be part of this. But he was also afraid that people would treat him differently because of his fame. So he went by the name John Hamilton, and then in 1943 actually legally changed his name to John Hamilton so that Sterling Hayden became his screen name and John Hamilton became his real name. So it was like after this, the war persona, the war doctor was the real doctor.
That's just confusing.
But I think, yeah, it probably says something about the profundity of his experience. He also, yeah, he earned an Order of Merit and left active duty in 1945. And when he returned to the U.S. in 1945, he told the press, "I feel a real obligation to make this a better country, and I believe that movies are the place to do it." So that was 1945, and he ended up joining the Communist Party for a while, which, of course, put him under fire in the 1950s from the House Committee of on Un-American Activities, who were trying to root out all the quote unquote commies in Hollywood. Um, and he became afraid for his career. And he apparently reached out to Hoover semi anonymously to clear his name from his quote unquote youthful indiscretion of joining the Communist Party. Not only joining it, but also like helping to set up the committee to fight back against the Committee on Un-American Activities. Like he was all in. And now he got cold feet and was kind of like, I'm sorry. And then because of that, and because of his ties before that, they decided they could use him as a pawn, and they threatened custody of his children and other things, and obviously his career and livelihood and all that. And he ended up agreeing to name names. So in the 50s, during the blacklist investigations, he named names of other people who were close to him and people in the industry. And later in his autobiography, he wrote, "I don't think you have the foggiest notion of the contempt I have for myself since the day I did that thing." So this film, 1964, it's happening after all of that. Do you think this is his own story of repentance?
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking about that as you said it, because I had no idea of this story till I saw it in the show notes. So yeah, there is a lot more going on. There's a lot more going on in the background of this film than I gave it credit for.
But yeah, I wonder. I think this is him also as being like, no, listen, I've been on all sides of this, and this is what I think. Okay, what do you think of him as Scrooge? I mean, Grudge.
It's just Grudge. Um, I mean, I think this is where I start to have issues with this film,
Mm-hmm.
because it is very, very, very po-faced and very, very earnest and
Mm-hmm.
very, very, very talky.
Mm-hmm.
Like basically, it's just the whole thing is a combination of two people having a conversation. It's basically a series. It's basically a series of two-handers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that gets really, even though it's only like an hour and a half long, that gets really oppressive after a while. It does feel like you're being shouted at somewhat. And the thing is, Grudge is such a caricature. Like
Mm-hmm.
he is such a caricature of the militant isolationist, um, trigger happy,
Mm-hmm.
sod the rest of the world. Although actually, I was watching this the same day I was reacting to the abomination that is the new national security the new national um, security strategy released by the Trump administration, and I think Daniel Grudge would have fit very comfortably into Pete Hegseth's Pentagon, but that's a story for another day.
I
But
mean,
yeah,
yeah, this film definitely feels on point in
it
modern.
it it does. But yeah, it's just like there's no room for nuance in this um in Grudge's character, and there's no room for nuance in this story. And it did just feel like I mean, I'm sure we might get into this in other categories, but it did feel like two, and no pun intended, but two very black and white positions arguing with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is more the case when it comes to the Ghost of Christmas Present.
Mm-hmm.
But the scene between him and Fred is so idealistic, and
Mm-hmm.
Grudge is so cynical that it's like,
Mm-hmm.
come on, there's there's
I mean,
got to be
it's definitely a devil's advocate
yeah,
situation. Yeah, yeah,
there's got to be room for
yeah.
something more than this.
I mean, yeah, so we have the situation here is that Fred, we'll get into Fred in a minute, but Fred comes to him to Grudge and says like this professor, John Jack Harris, he was supposed to have like an exchange with the Polish professor to, share information basically between Poland and the US and the research and all that, and Grudge is very xenophobic, and he's like, we don't need any of the other to come into our place, and we don't need our people to go to the other place. And that's where it all kind of begins with him. That's the position, that's his Scrooginess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, I think I know the answer to this, but who are we naming the winner of this
No, I'm
category?
sorry. The FX one wins this
No, that's fine.
comfortably.
Yeah. That's fine. I'm with you on that. Okay, so we're 1-1, and this is a good spot to take another break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about all of the ghosts. See you on the other side. Okay, welcome back. We are here for category 3 of the Lowdown. And this is the Marley of it all. So we have in one corner from 2019, Jacob Marley, played by Stephen Graham. And from the other corner in 1964, we have Marley Grudge, played by photo stand ins. So let's start with obviously one of these plays a bigger role, but both of them are key to the story. Let's start with the Stephen Graham of it all. What did you think of the FX Marley?
Yeah, I really this is one of my favorite aspects of it. Like I said earlier, I really like the fact that they've expanded Marley's role, and he's
Mm-hmm.
almost like the Greek chorus in the background of the whole thing. And also like the opening scene of this is a young man walking up to Marley's grave, unzipping his trousers and pissing, literally pissing on Marley's grave.
But I have a question because later they say that that kid goes there, takes the train every Christmas to do that. But didn't
There's
Marley
only
die?
one Christmas, yeah.
Yeah, it's like he did it once. You're saying he
He
did
did
it
it
once,
once.
but he plans to do it again.
He's
He's like, I'm doing that next year. That was fun.
yeah. But yeah, like literally walks up to it, pisses on his grave. And
Yeah.
then you see you see Marley lying in his coffin getting wet. Um and I do just love that it clearly says on the headstone, rest in peace.
Yeah. But
So
they're not. Yeah.
I love the fact that Marley is just lying there, waiting for something to happen. Um, and then another bit of Victoriana, he rings the bell because there is often a bell attached to coffins that people
Mm-hmm.
can ring in case are accidentally buried alive. And I thought of you in this scene, Elysia, when Marley is in hell,
Mm-hmm.
having his chain forged.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, Stephen Graham, great actor. Love the fact they make more use of Marley. Also, there's a really good special effect where Scrooge goes to open the door, the bottom half of the knocker falls off, and that's the bottom half of Marley's jaw that falls off. And so
Mm-hmm.
when Marley walks through the door, like Scrooge is picking up the bottom half, so he's not got the wrapper. He's just got It's sort of
Right.
wandering around with the bottom half of his jaw missing. It's a really gnarly effect. It's really well
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, that was one of the gorier effects. Yeah, that was really well done. I did honestly expect that there would be more like horror stuff like that. So I appreciated that. Yeah, that like because the door knocker haunt. That's one of the ones that I always like pay attention to when I'm thinking about the adaptation aspect. And I was like, oh, that was a very subtle haunt with the bottom falling off, but it tied together nicely with Marley's jaw literally falling off. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Stephen Graham, I mean, I know for you it's probably inconceivable that some Americans may not be familiar, but he's definitely a UK talent staple, probably best known maybe to a bunch of Americans for just having won the Emmy for Adolescence this year. I don't know, do you have anything to add about Stephen Graham, who he is?
He's in the Irishman.
Mm. He's
Um,
in everything.
yeah, he's in a lot of stuff. He's definitely one of those actors that likes to be in work.
Mhm.
Um, probably his breakout role is the series This Is England. I don't know whether
I
you've
haven't seen
seen
that
that.
one. Maybe wasn't he in that one? The Russell T Davies one. What is it? Oh, Years and Years.
I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
Oh, that's what I always think about. But anyway, he's UK staple for sure. BBC staple. Um,
Well, I don't know about BBC staple.
no.
Actually, he's done his fair amount of BBC stuff, but actually, I always think of him more as a Channel 4 guy.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Which to be wait, is this on channel? No, no, no. I was watching something else on channel 4. Never mind. I erased what I was saying. um, but yeah, as far as you said he was sent to hell, I'm going to push that back on that slightly because I think this is purgatory because we see
Oh
when
yeah.
he first goes down, there's a bell that's ringing and there's text on the bell. I had to pause and to read it, but it says hope and longing, purgatory, England. And at another point, he calls it not quite hell. Or when he speaks to the spirit he meets down there, who never came back at the end, by the way. I expected us to get the story of what happened with the black guy in purgatory, but he's just the one who kicks it off.
Yeah.
But anyway, he calls it not quite hell. Um, and I liked that they beefed up the role. I liked that they made more explicit that Marley and Scrooge's fates are tied together, which I kind of assumed from most other adaptations. But I do have to say, if I have two knocks for this adaptation, one is we'll talk about it later, but some of the darkness, I'm like, did they go too far? And then I would say the other thing is sometimes it felt like it lagged, and one of the things was, like, Marley endlessly going through purgatory. I'm like, "That's enough purgatory now, thank you."
Yeah, but isn't that the whole point of purgatory?
Yeah. But the audience shouldn't be in purgatory. But no, I understand. Okay, question though. And I'm assuming just Stephen Graham wasn't available to film at this point, but we never saw Marley in the offices. We saw him and Scrooge out doing business together elsewhere. But like what was Marley's relationship with Cratchit? He was never around for any of that stuff.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. Because
Hmm.
again, it comes back to the fact that they've altered the timeline. They've telescoped the timeline so it's 1 year rather
Mhm.
than 7. Because although it's not sort of stated in the novella, I always sort of in my head, Cratchit is recruited to the firm after Marley dies to sort of
Mm.
help Scrooge manage all the flow of business through the office.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
like
that
in
makes
the
sense.
novella, I always
Mhm.
assumed that Cratchit and Marley didn't know each other.
Cuz it's 7 years in
Yeah,
between in the novella. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, in this one, it's much more likely that because they monkeyed around with the timeline, that Cratchit was working for the firm when Marley was there. So yeah, that would have been interesting to find out.
I do think that there are adaptations where we see flashbacks where Cratchit is there while Marley's there. But anyway, I don't know. Yeah, here it's just they didn't connect those two aspects of Scrooge. Okay, but switching to the A Carol for Another Christmas. In this, the 1964 one, Marley was Grudge's son. Like what? What? So Marley is the tie that binds together Grudge and Fred, because we never, well, that's more for the second next category, but doesn't, we never hear about Fred's mom, who would be Scrooge's or Grudge's sister. So that's just not a factor. So the bind that ties Grudge and Fred together is Marley, the son that died. He died in war on Christmas Eve, of course. Um, Apparently did not need his own redemption because he was a hero. Yeah, I mean, this is sort of, I guess, like there's an anti-war message to this movie, but I would say even more than that, there's an anti-isolationist message.
Yeah. Well,
And like,
I think the message of this film was really, really confused.
mm,
Um, because on the one hand, it's like you say, it's anti-isolationist, and I think
mhm,
in 1964 that is important because
mhm,
Barry Goldwater is running on a kind of neo-isolationist ticket for the
mhm.
Republican Party, but it's also very anti-war. Yeah, I find the politics of this film both ever present and also quite sort of confusing.
Okay, okay. I mean, for me, I see the balance there, and actually, I'll get into it later. And we'll get into the politics more because that's more important in the visions. But for instance, we get here, closing your eyes, that's called sleeping, and it also leads to dying. It's like one of the main messages that comes through, but I can see, as far as who grudges and the fact that they made Marley a son that he has lost, he probably they're probably suggesting that he is isolating himself because, like, he thinks if my son hadn't gone to war, if we just hadn't gotten involved, my son would still be alive.
And there's a whole thing at the beginning where he's like obsessively playing "Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree," which
Mm.
I assume is like Marley's favorite song or something.
Yeah, yeah, it's a classic, song from World War II.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, the whole, we don't get, like, the door knocker situation. Instead, we get a reflection in, the door, we get a glimpse of him in the other room, and we get the whole phonograph shenanigans. What did you think about that? As I mean, because I understand, like, obviously, with the illustration, they don't have an outside set they can use. So, I thought that that was, perfectly fine and subtly creepy.
Yeah, yeah.
The whole phonograph not turning off thing, yeah. Okay, so let's turn to the staff and the rest of the family. So we have in 2019, we have most of the classic Dickens characters, but not all. And then in 1964, we have the household staff, we have one female lieutenant randomly, and we have Fred. All right, so starting with 2019, what did you think of the 2019 supporting staff? So we're leaving out the ghosts and such for now, but the employees and friends and family.
Well, Cratchit claps back quite a bit in this.
He is salty in this
Yeah.
version.
Um,
He,
and you,
he's like, what is it? Scrooge is like, oh, there should be a day where everyone's cruel. That should be a special day. And he's like, they'd call it Scrooge Day, you bastard.
yeah,
No, I added the
basically.
last part.
What was it? Be careful of the word litigation. You misspell it. You misspell it often. I misspelt it once 4 years ago.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, I mean, they do establish the Cratchits as churchgoers for, well, we'll talk about Mary separately in a minute, but just sort of like the whole moral, la la la. um, by the way, did you recognize? Do you know Morris Gibbons? Or sorry, do you know Lenny Rush, the Tiny Tim actor?
No, but apparently he was, according to the show notes, he was in Doctor Who.
Yes, he was Morris Gibbons in the last two episodes of New Who season one.
Okay.
Yeah. But this was a younger version of him. Um, yeah, I mean, that I think we can't skirt any more around the whole Mrs. Cratchit of it all. The fact that this whole situation, so Mary Cratchit, this is a whole new aspect of the adaptation, and I have really mixed feelings about it. I think it does really interesting things, and I also hate it. But her husband thinks she's been getting money for their son from her wealthy cousin in America. But then we see her like throwing letters in the fire and she's clearly upset about it. By the way, the fact that when they have this exchange and they talk about how many T's are on the name, I thought that there was only two T's last year, but now there's only one. And they make a joke about the Americans, which fair. But the whole
No,
one to
they
two,
drink coffee. Yeah.
the whole one to two teeth thing made me feel called out for the fact that I never know how to spell Cratchit. But anyway, the dark part is so 7 years ago. So they use the 7 years ago, like Marley dying, but in this case, it's when this awful incident with Mrs. Cratchit happened, where basically she came behind her husband's back. She came to Scrooge to ask him to help pay for her son's surgery, so that so he could live, And he was basically like, "Well, what would you do for this money?" And he implied he wanted her to prostitute herself for the money, but he like I could tell from the beginning, he never really wanted her to go through with it. Obviously, or maybe I just assumed that based on the character, but he just wanted her to humiliate herself and just to prove that it was very much a power act, I think, to show and probably we are supposed to read something about the fact that this version of the character was sexually abused himself as a child. I don't know. What do you think about this whole situation?
Yeah, I think the way Scrooge puts it is he wants to find the exchange rate on virtue.
Hmm.
So yeah, like how far are you willing to go? And yeah,
Well, what is virtue? Because he's acting far less virtuous than her
yeah,
in that moment.
yeah, um, yeah. I mean, it's because this is the thing. It's like I know what you're saying because it turns Scrooge from somebody who is generally mean into somebody who is very specifically evil.
I mean,
Um,
it's like, how do you, like, as soon as this starts happening, I'm like, how do you redeem yourself from this?
yeah,
In the terms of this story. And I guess, yeah, it's okay where it ends up. We'll talk about it. But the one thing I do like about this is, and we'll pick up where this leads, but she says after this, she's crying and it's awful and it's a tough watch, that whole thing. And then when she leaves, she gets the money when she says that she will summon spirits to bring Scrooge remorse. And Scrooge later thanks her for
yeah.
the summoning of the spirits.
D- I mean, do you think that is in the no pun intended, but do you think that is in the spirit of the original Scrooge character?
To go that far,
Yeah,
I don't know. That it felt that's why I kind of like I think it's interesting. It's a definitely a unique twist, but it's also why I kind of hate it. um because as you have pointed out in past discussions about this story, that the idea of Scrooge is more that he's indifferent, not that he's evil.
yeah,
And this tips him over a bit,
yes, it does. It really
quite a
does.
bit. Yeah. Oh, and I'm also disturbed about also the fact that when she doesn't want to tell her husband about this, obviously years later even, and then at some point she's almost tells him, and then she lies to him with this very specific story about stealing jewelry from a woman who wouldn't know better. I'm like, this is something you've clearly thought about before too, and maybe you should have done that, to be honest.
Yeah,
Hmm. So yeah, I have complex feelings about that whole situation. And I miss both. Neither of these films have Fezziwig. There's like no room for joy in these two, but especially not this one. Um,
and the 2019 one, like Belle, the role of Belle gets like really, really stripped down.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Belle is just basically a photo montage. And Fred is her child is used too little. There is that fun exchange at the beginning. I liked the whole thing where he's like, and there will be fig pudding too. Oh, no, Scrooge says to him, oh, and there will be fig pudding too in January. And Fred says, would you come in January? And he says, no. But also Fred gets sassy too. Because he doesn't we never see him later at the party or anything, and we never see him at the end at all. He says that his He says straight to Scrooge's face, his sister's in pain. And then, yeah, he says it's his final invite because his wife insisted he give up. Do you think, I mean, what do you think about the fact they don't show us any reconciliation between these two at the end? Are we supposed to assume that's the end of their relationship or that
No,
reconciliation's
I
coming?
I sort of took it that that's where that as he was sort of walking away at the end, I took it that that's where he was going.
Okay.
He was going to Fred's.
They could have shown us that.
Yeah, they could.
Yeah, they did strip back a lot of secondary characters. Like Scrooge mentions that he dismissed a maid for idleness. So I expected her to pop up later selling his bed sheets, and or his bed curtains, as often
Yeah, we
happens.
don't get that.
No, we don't get that. We don't get like the wealthy colleagues who don't care about him when he dies, or the debtors who's glad that he's dead. They did strip that back. We do definitely get more with his sister. I'm going to save most of that for the next category where we talk about the spirits. But apparently, she basically rescued him from their father. Like she fought back against their father, and Scrooge never really acknowledged or understood that, and remained distant from her, which I find really sad. But now he sees. This is the one F bomb that made me laugh. That the only one that I noticed. She sees after he leaves the school, and the headmaster wants to follow, and she pulls a gun on him, and he's like, "She pulled a fucking gun like a highwayman." Yeah, this is a fun Lottie. Yeah, she is beefed up, I think, compared to normally she's called Fanny, by the way, but I guess they just didn't want the
Yeah,
jokes.
no, that's in 2019. That's got a whole lot of connotations that you just don't want.
Lottie's a nice name. Fine. Yeah, often they call her Fran or something because at least that's close, but I guess Lottie's a nice name.
Yeah.
And then yeah, in the 1964 version, we get we do have nephew Fred is the he I think he definitely plays a bigger role in the 1964 than the 2019. He's kind of the other main character if there is one, I guess. What do you think?
I mean, like I say, the Daniel Grudge is in there for the whole thing, and then it's just a series of two-handers.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I really did not like this version of Nephew Fred at all. I think it's just vomit-inducingly earnest. Um, and this is the thing. I think in his way, he's as bad as Grudge is, because like the way Serling writes it, you set them up as two like polar opposites. They're not even arguing with each other because they're not. They're not. They've not got a common frame of reference around which to argue, so they're just speechifying at each other. And
Hmm.
like for all Grudges certain that he's right, Fred is also just as certain that he's right. And like I just wanted to sit everybody in this film down and go, it's more complicated than that.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
the world is not going to automatically become a better place just because you set up a load of cultural exchanges. I'm not saying it's a bad thing,
No, but I
but
think
it's
that they
more
do.
complicated than that.
Okay, we're going to get back to that point because I think they do actually acknowledge that in a way I really appreciated. But
Okay.
we'll come back to that. But just speaking about nephew Fred, they combined him with the charity seekers, which to me makes sense. Yeah, if you're going to condense characters, yeah, that absolutely makes sense to combine the two. Although I kept waiting for the dinner invite, and there never was one. I'm like, oh, okay. Um, yeah, and again, no Fezziwig, no sister mentioned, but clearly he has.
Implied.
Yeah, he has a. And then there's no Cratchit either. I guess Cratchit is replaced by this manservant called Charles, who is a black man, which will come back later. He's barely in the beginning, but I noticed he kept walking by, and like the camera would be like, "Hey, look, remember this face." um, And then, yeah, also the, Belle character is stripped down. She I suppose, or I don't even know if it counts. Lieutenant Gibson, I assumed, was the Belle character, but there's no romance. But she's just a
Yeah,
fellow officer in Japan.
yeah. I mean, maybe, but not really. I just thought that was a completely different character.
Yeah, I should point out that that character was played by Britt Erkland, who was at the time married to Peter Sellers, who we're going to talk about in a bit. And then, yeah, I don't know. This part confused me. The fact that we have Grudge has made Ruby and his butler Charles, and then they show up in the future vision. We'll talk about the whole future vision separately, but they just randomly show up, and then and Charles, he is being encouraged to kill himself, and Ruby, the one black woman there, is the only one crying for him as everyone's like, jump, jump, jump. And then one child stands up, who I'm like, is this Tiny Tim? But then he opens a box that says, just like daddy's, another educational toy. And then he pulls out a gun and he shoots the man. And I'm like, did Tiny Tim just fucking shoot Bob Cratchit?
Wait a minute, Tiny Tim has just committed homicide.
Of his father figure. So that was all. What? Okay. So I think I know your answer to this. Which collection of allies would you say wins?
It's got to be the FX one again. It's got to be the FX one. I just like the FX one pretty much more across the board than
Yeah, well, so far we are 2-1.
yeah.
And I agree so far. We'll see if we come up with a tie. All right, let's take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the spirits and visions and conclusion of this all. All right. So, category number 4, spirits and visions. We've got, on the one hand, from 2019, the shape-shifting and familiar quote-unquote ghosts. None of them were very ghostly, but anyway. Versus 1964, the quote-unquote ghost, soldiers and company. So starting, as usual, with 2019, what did you think about the whole sequence here with the ghosts and the visions? We're
Really like
saving the redemption for the last category.
really like the Ghost of Christmas Past. I thought that, I mean, even though it's not what's described in the book, I thought the idea of the Ghost of Christmas Past being Ali Baba worked really well, sort of tapping into the one positive memory Scrooge had from this terrible boarding school. Worked
Mm.
really well. I like the fact that the Ghost of Christmas Present was his sister.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not in any way like the book, and also like the Ghost of Christmas Present, because there's so much tension in the Cratchit household. It's like, this is not a good Christmas. This is Christmas with a lot of drama going on in the background. Um, and so yeah, it felt a lot less that bit felt a lot less homely than it should. Or that it would in a more traditional adaptation. And yeah, the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come with his mouth sewn shut.
Mm-hmm.
Really creepy.
Mm.
Really, really creepy. Very Doctor Who, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
Yeah.
I liked the storytelling element where he wills time to go forward to 4 p.m. and it ends up accidentally winding the entire world forward. I could have used more of that. I would like when they play with the time element in this story. I did note, by the way, that he blames his visions on lightheadedness rather than lightheadedness from hunger rather than in the book where it's on indigestion. So it's emphasizing in this case that he is miserly toward himself as well.
Yeah. Or that his maid had drugged him.
Or that his drugged him. No, yeah, because he dismissed her for idleness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. But yeah, and I thought it was interesting. Also, this was interesting to watch as a movie, knowing it was a TV show, because there are things like at one point he just randomly goes, instead of never leaving the room, he just rushes into a middle of a flashback, and there's no context for this flashback, and then it ends, and then I'm like, oh right, that would have been the end of an episode. That's
Mhm.
why that's sort of like the cliffhanger in a way. But yeah, you mentioned the Ghost of Christmas Past. It took me far too long to realize that it was played by Andy Serkis.
Oh, well, no, because I was like, is this Ralph Ineson or is it Andy Serkis? It's one of the two of them. But yeah, it took me a while to narrow it down to Andy Serkis.
Yeah, no, it really took, but Andy Serkis is obviously famous for disappearing into his roles. For anyone who doesn't know, like that's Gollum and Kino Loy and I don't know, a bunch of other things. Caesar from Planet of the Apes. Um, and yeah, it was funny. He kind of looked a bit like the ghost of Christmas Yet to Come when he was first introduced, but
Yes,
wearing
he
a crown
does.
of thorns.
Yeah,
Um,
or he kind of looks like a bit of an amalgam because he also looks a bit like Christmas Present with
right.
the robe as well. So
True, true. And it's funny, they gave him his whole full episode, but then he's only in half of it because, like you said, he does also appear as the Alibaba form, which is something from the book that Scrooge used to read these Alibaba books, and that was his escape during these horrible years at school where other adaptations did not have him being molested, but he did not have a good time there regardless. And Alibaba in this was also another one that could maybe do a double take. He's played by Kevin Novak, who plays Nandor in What We Do in the Shadows.
I've never seen What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh, well, you should remedy that.
Okay.
Yeah, and then as you mentioned before, that Belle's role was quite cut down. We only see like, oh look, remember you loved a woman, you would have had children with her. Like I'm like, is this the ghost of Christmas that could have been?
Yeah.
And then that's it. That's the only mention we get of her. I thought I was like, okay, you have all this space, but it seemed like they really wanted to shy away from joy and lean into the darkness in this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
But like I said, I do like that the Ghost of Christmas Present was his sister.
Hmm.
And you often remarked I was the cleverest person you knew. Yeah, and I didn't always mean it as I didn't always mean it as a compliment.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that that's a great way to use his sister more, to have because she is passed away in every version of the story. So it's great to have her in there and have that be an influence also to where he first sees like he was taking for granted the things she did for him. He's reminded of that, and then he gets to see her, and that's a good influence on him in terms of don't be a dick or you'll go to hell. Huh? And then I love the what she says about the third spirit, the terrible one, the unknown one, and the one who decides. And then we see, yeah, the lips sewn shut because apparently you can't know the future, so he can't speak. Like, okay, I'll go with it.
Yeah.
That's why he's silent always. Yeah. And what did you think overall? I mean, I guess you've said, and we're going to dive into this more, but your overall thoughts on the 1964 ghosts and visions?
Yeah. I really like the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. Robert Shaw is giving it the full, like, I am a Shakespearean actor, giving it the full beans. I am acting. I've got my big acting hat on. I am really delivering these lines. It's all very dramatic, darling. But I have real issues with the Ghost of Christmas Past and the Ghost of Christmas Present. So, the Ghost of Christmas Past, it's this really cool setup. They're on a ship. It's a troop ship. They're bringing casualties back. Well, they're not bringing casualties back from the front. They're just endlessly milling around. And the idea is this is, the frightful cost of war. And he goes off on this great big exposition about how this has been going on since the Romans, and it's none of our it's none of your business, but what happens affects us all, and we've got to be involved, and we've got to care, and we've got to talk, we've got to negotiate, we've got to see the other side of the table. And it's like, okay, I get being opposed to isolationism,
Hmm.
and I get wanting to talk. But some of the wars you're talking about, like this is the Nazis you're talking about for a lot of it. You really
Yeah,
think
but they're saying
Ukraine?
don't. But they're saying don't stay out of the war. They're
Well, yeah, but
saying
they're also saying like you can always negotiate. You can always talk. Can you really talk with? Are you really going to negotiate your way out of it with the Nazis?
well, even
Should
even
you?
negotiating. Yeah, I mean, it's better than annihilating each other with nuclear weapons.
Is it?
Yeah, yeah. I'm definitely sure that I would rather appeal to someone's reason than annihilate the face of the planet. I'm comfortable standing on that hill.
Okay. Well, this is the thing. I think this is where we're different people because
Yeah.
I'm not, or at least
Hmm.
at least it's more. At least I think it's more. At least I think it's more complicated than that. And this is
Well, I
like,
think this does okay, well, let's get into what they do say here. So, okay, we talked about first of all, there's the first scare with the phonograph, and there's that World War II era popular song, "Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree with Anyone Else But Me" by the Andrews Sisters. So that's a callback. Um, and then yeah, I called the Ghost of Christmas Past, I called it the Ghost of Wars Past.
yeah, basically.
But yeah, so we get this whole like here visiting Hiroshima post World War II, and we hear this lovely singing, and they're like, "Oh, that's Sachiko, one of the group of schoolgirls who had their faces melted off by the nuclear bomb." Jesus, okay. Of course, no, that actually happened, but yeah, because they all looked up as the bomb was falling. So yeah, and then we see, and this is where I think the nuance starts to kick in because I hear so often about we're not going to get into the politics of it all, but we are going to discuss what the movie says. And it says, it repeats this argument I hear all the time about like, oh, but dropping the bomb actually ended the war and it saved all these lives. And then on the other hand, it's like, but it also actually mostly just killed a bunch of people. So we have like this cold calculation, as the lieutenant character calls it, versus this heartfelt humanism that she and others are putting forward. And I'm definitely more on the side of heartfelt humanism every day of the week. And so the ghost says that the way to stop the killing is to spend more time talking, because when talking stops, fighting starts, and that's a recurring theme throughout these visions. That like when we're talking, at least we're talking. When we stop talking, is when things really, literally blow up.
Yeah, but that's my problem with it because I think that is right most of the time. But there are people you can't talk to. There are people you are not going to talk round.
I
And
think we are
then
far too quick in deciding that of people, and that is the root of our endless wars, because we say that way too quickly.
do we? I mean,
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
like I said, one of the wars he's talking about is the Second World War, is the war that
Hmm.
Bush fought in. You really want to be negotiating with Hitler? You really want to be negotiating with the Nazis? What would that look like?
I mean,
How
we know
many?
what it
How
looks
many?
like because it's happening right now.
Yeah, how many? How many people are you? Well, it is. It is happening right now. Millions of people in Ukraine. Nobody seems to. It's worth talking to Vladimir Putin, is it? Really?
I mean, if it's going to stop, that's the only way through. But I don't. I mean, we're not going to get into the actual politics because obviously I'm very upset with the way the situation in Ukraine and Russia is being handled internationally. We're not going to get to the bottom of that. That's going to be an 8-hour podcast. Um, but it's it has to begin with talking. There's no other way out. There's talking or there's bombing, and I want the bombing to stop. And there's no way to stop it unless you negotiate something.
Sometimes we're not going to agree with this, but sometimes I'm not a pacifist. I don't. I'm not a pacifist. I do believe there are things worth fighting for. I do believe there are things worth dying for, and I do believe there are things worth killing for.
I am a pacifist, but I do still believe there are things worth fighting and dying for. And I suppose at the end of the day, it's just about where we draw the line. And we've had this conversation before with
Yeah.
Silo, where the conversation where you said it comes down to um, are which do you value more, order or justice? And you said you would lean more towards order, and I'm over here like, do you hear the people sing? Literally, I open the episode like that. So,
But yeah, I just wanted the ghost of pragmatic Christmas to come along and go, guys, you're both wrong. This is much more. There are many more areas of grey.
yeah. But okay, but about the movie itself, it is interesting how, for instance, like the ghost of now basically Christmas Present plays on the Ghost of Christmas Present tropes in the book. So we see him in this case at a table that has like covered with a feast. I noticed a lot of pig products in general. I'm like,
Yeah,
is that
they got a good deal on some pork for this.
yeah, like it's like here's pork prepared 20 ways. Like, okay, geez. Very anti-Muslim of you.
And lager as well.
Yeah, no, yeah. But but he says, he doesn't have the children hovering under his robes, but he says like part of me is gnawing hunger, part of me is satiated. I represent the human race. And he's saying, he's represents both the haves and the have-nots. And he confronts Scrooge for saying like, "Oh, you don't want to see the poor while you're enjoying your plenty." But he sort of sh- shaming him for like you just want to enjoy your plenty in peace without having to remember that you're taking it out of the mouths of other people.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So he says he represents human wanton need, and I suppose that means that grudge represents ignorance, which is the other child under the robe usually.
I suppose the problem I had with this one is in the novella and in most adaptations of A Christmas Carol, the evils that the Ghost of Christmas Present is asking Scrooge to solve is stuff that is within Scrooge's power to solve.
Mhm.
So pay Cratchit decently,
Mhm.
be decent to your nephew, treat your workers better, give charity, and it's like, okay, Daniel Grudge is a wealthy guy, but to like in to indict him for like all the ills of humanity seems a little bit harsh. No,
Yeah.
I tell you what it is. It's one of those conversations you occasionally get into on social media where you like go, oh, yeah, really nice sandwich that I bought from Sainsbury's today, and somebody will go at you. You bought a sandwich from Sainsbury's? Do you not know that they
Yeah,
buy
yeah.
cress from Israel? It's like, I'm
Mhm.
sorry. No, actually, the show that did this best was The Good Place. It's like,
Mm.
it's impossible. Like, you can't hold me responsible for all the consequences of my actions because I don't even know all the consequences of my actions.
I mean, yeah, I do think that that is why it's less of a direct adaptation. And one of the key things that makes it less of a direct adaptation is that A Christmas Carol is typically a story of personal redemption. And this is where grudge is meant to stand in for maybe an entire nation or at least an entire political party in a nation. So it just by loosening the analogy, it makes it a little less potent in that regard, I would say.
Yeah.
But for me, at the same time, I find it the more interesting adaptation just because of all these aspects that we've been talking about.
Okay.
And then so then we get to the most on the nose in case you missed it. We have Christmas Yet to Come, which is a guy in a hooded cape and beard in a destroyed town hall of the future because basically the UN fell apart, so everything got bombed. And there's no more talk because society's decimated. There's no more keeping track of time even. I was like, okay, I don't know about that. Like if people still got sundials. Um, and then yeah, so this is where it really directly calls back to the Cuban Missile Crisis. It says somebody thought somebody had dropped some bombs, so everybody launched their bombs, basically. And yeah, the UN no longer exists because everyone dropped out. And before everyone knew it, the talking had stopped. And then so we see the group of people comes gathering in the ruins, and we hear These are the fittest who happen to survive, the leftovers of the crap game after they rolled the H bomb and nobody made their point. So I love how they're showing the futility of it. But so they introduce themselves. This is where Peter Sellers comes in. He introduces himself as Imperial Me and addresses the rest of the people as the government. The non-government of the Me people, and these are isolationists who have not learned from the fall of the UN and are rejecting other groups who want to recreate some sort of diplomacy because they say the bleeding hearts want to take over. And this group wants individualism above collectivism. And I will admit, it gets a bit on the nose. Yeah, it does.
Just a little bit. But also, like Peter Sellers, just like it's just a fantastically over the top,
Do you want to
nostalgia
explain
thrilling
who
performance.
Peter Sellers is to anyone who doesn't know?
So Peter Sellers, famous actor, mostly a comic actor. Um, the Inspector Clouseau, Doctor Strangelove, the Inspector Clouseau movies, which at their best are like some of the best slapstick comedy you will ever see. At their worst, they're unwatchable bilge. But um, yeah,
Is that what you're calling? Is that the Pink Panther movies?
yeah. Sorry, the Pink Panther movie. No, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the Pink Panther movies. The first two Pink Panther movies are among my very favourite movies. I just think they're hysterically funny. Which is Pink Panther and Shot in the Dark. But yeah, really good. Doctor Strangelove, and also the Goonies, like the radio
Hmm.
show, the Goonies, which my
A
granddad
radio show.
it was a radio show to begin with.
The Goonies?
Yeah.
Like the Steven Spielberg movie?
No, no, no. Sorry, the Goonies was Peter Sellers. Originally, it was Peter Sellers, Harry Seacombe. Who were the other two?
But what is it in general?
It was a radio show. It was what
About
launched
what?
Peter Sellers' career. It was like sketch comedy.
Oh, sketch comedy. Okay, I didn't know about that one. I mean, Americans will know him best obviously from Pink Panther, James Bond, and
Oh,
obviously, yeah.
the terrible version of Casino
Yeah, he's not the
Royale.
most beloved James Bond, but he is beloved as the Pink Panther, and he was also the lead. I think he plays like three different roles in Doctor
He
Strangelove.
does. He plays Strangelove. He plays the president, and he plays the RAF officer whose name
Okay.
I'm blanking on.
Yeah. And he served in the Air Force during World War II in
He did.
India mostly, and then he was post-war in Germany and Europe. So he's another one with the military history in this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he was a big name here. I was surprised actually that he had a relatively small role, but I guess he's too old to be Fred. But yeah, he says he's the imperial me, and he says that the end goal basically is to get rid of all other groups until the world belongs to one individual ultimate absolute me. And it seems clear obviously that he thinks that's going to be him, but yet the other people will cheer him on and they band together like, let's take out the others and then we can turn on each other, hooray. And it does feel on the nose, but I also see people all the time like, oh yay, we're part of the in group that's going to take everyone out, but like he just told you that you're next. He just told you you're next. So I see it happen in real life, and I appreciated it being represented here. But okay, when it comes down to which of these two wins, I know which your vote is going to be, obviously.
Yeah, it's got to be the FX one again.
I mean, and I think again, in some ways, it's so difficult because I am more intrigued. My brain is more activated by the Conversations and Visions from the 1964 one. But obviously, 2019 is the better adaptation. And it comes down to personal versus psychological, but I'll go along with you. And your favorite's going to win this one, even though I do actually kind of prefer the other one.
No, if you prefer the other one, you prefer
No,
the other
yeah,
one.
but
It's
I mean, I
fine.
prefer the other movie in general, but just the way
Okay.
I've chosen these categories, it's going to end up being, 2019 because here's the last category, the repentance. So we have on the one hand, the 2019 repentance is save Timmy, not me, versus in 1964, maybe the UN is not such a bad idea after all. So I was thinking with the 2019 one, they actually kind of show Tiny Tim's death-ish. He doesn't
They
end up
do.
quite dying.
He falls through the ice.
Mhm. And I was thinking about the fact, we've been watching these silent films where often the visions are projected within the screen just because of their limitations at the time. But I was just thinking, like, this falling through the ice thing. It's something that happens in the air above Scrooge's desk, but in a 3D way that's really, really visually well done. And I was thinking if they could have seen this 100 years ago, it would have blown their
Yeah, they
mother
would have
effing minds.
absolutely blown their minds.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, it is the fact above all else, it is the fact that Scrooge wants Tim saved instead of himself. That's what ends up redeeming him. Do you agree?
Yes,
Do you think that that's on brand for the book?
yes, I think it's on brand for the book. And yeah, I like the fact that Scrooge himself, Scrooge recognizes himself that he is irredeemable from what he's done to Mary,
I mean,
and that
yeah.
it really doesn't matter what happens to him.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's also interesting that every adaptation, has him avoiding looking at his dead body. He doesn't want to acknowledge that he's the one dead in the future visions. But here, he just confronts that straight on.
Yeah, and I do actually like the fact they cut out the bit with the Char Lady and Mrs. Dilber and the Rag and Bone Man.
Yeah.
Just not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just I like the fact it was a little bit different. It got more directly to the point.
Okay, yeah. I was amused by the fact that, Scrooge, he has the vision, obviously, of Tiny Tim falling through the ice. So he runs out onto the ice and starts salting it to prevent a skating accident. And I'm like, this does actually look very Scrooge-ish, that, like, it looks, because he's
Yeah,
like, "No children will skate this thing."
Nobody is skating today.
Yeah.
No skating for you.
It does seem very Scrooge's. If anyone sees that, they're like, "Totally in character. Come on, dude." But then he does go, and this is interesting. He tells the Cratchits about the spirits. I think this is the only adaptation I've seen where he actually tells people about the spirits he saw, and he and that whole sequence actually kind of gave me a dark chuckle. Like, he goes into the Cratchits and he's like, fathers, mothers, and children," and he points to who I assume is Martha, the eldest daughter. He's like, "And whoever you are." And Tiny Tim says, "Is this what happens when someone drinks laudanum?" Oh, laudanum was a concoction of alcohol and opium that people did drink too much of at the time. See my episodes about Frankenstein for more on that. And then in this version, Mary gets the final line of the whole thing, which kind of feels appropriate after what this adaptation put her through. And she says, "Spirits past, present, and future. There is still much to do." What do you think that means?
I don't know that they're planning a sequel at some point. I don't.
That was what I wondered too. I mean, I guess, yeah, there's more people to redeem, but I wonder if they did think maybe we'll do a sequel.
Christmas Carol 2, the recaroling.
If for any of the adaptations we've talked about so far, which would you most like to see a sequel to?
Ooh. Does that include last year as well?
Hmm.
I don't know. I'd kind of like to see a sequel to the Patrick Stewart one. I'd
Okay.
kind of like to see Patrick Stewart as the jolly old Scrooge. Like
Hmm.
you never get that adaptation. You never get the next chapter where Scrooge is like, where Scrooge is keeping Christmas as well as any man could.
Yeah, that's true. Or you have like the Spirited one with Will Ferrell
Yeah,
and Ryan
that
Reynolds,
would work as well.
where he's just dies immediately after his redemption.
Yeah,
But yeah, I would totally watch him a sequel to that one. Okay, and so switching gears to the redemption for the 1964 one, we get Grudge just wakes up on the floor basically of his office. And apparently he phoned Fred while he was in a trance at 3 a.m. Fred's like, "You phoned me at 3 a.m.?" He's like, "That tracks, probably, yeah."
It was a heavy night for.
I mean, they did set up the drinking. And yeah, Fred of course mentions he's on his way to church. Let's not forget. um oh, and we do have a caroling moment where
Yes.
we have the UN brings it back around to the UN. We hear on the radio the delegates' children from New York City are caroling, each singing Christmas carols in their native languages. And I think this is interesting. First of all, I will say they are singing "God Rest You Merry Gentlemen." So there's that. Um, but then, yeah, then he says, of course, that won't stop their fathers from beating each other's brain out tomorrow with words. And this is why I called this hope punk, and why I think there is more nuance. Is there? It's not saying talking solves everything. It's saying things are bad and people are going to fight. But if we can take these moments to recognize that we are all one people, that will make the talking go just a little bit better. We're just doing every little small act of rebellion against the darkness pushing us toward war.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not buying.
It's fine. I'm not putting you in charge of my world order.
Fair enough. Probably a good call.
But it's very pro children, obviously. Like it reminded me of, did you watch WandaVision?
Yes.
And there's the episodes in the middle where they're like, it's for the children, for the children, for the children. Do you know? Like during the magic show episode and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, it reminded me of that. But yeah, his grudge's redemption is he accepts the need for the UN. He wishes his nephew a Merry Christmas, and then he eats breakfast in the kitchen with the staff. But it's not like he invites. It's not like he's like, George and Ruby, sit down and have some coffee with me. He's like, no, but I am in the same room with you, and so look at
Yeah.
me.
You can very much tell this is the the first civil right the Voting Rights Act has just passed, but the Civil Rights Act of 1965 is coming down the pike.
Well, it is interesting to put this one, yeah, because it came out in 1964. It's overlap. You haven't been watching It, Welcome to Derry at all, have you?
No, it's not really my thing.
No, yeah, fair. It's definitely horror, like full on horror. But it is set in 1962, and the Cold War is a major backdrop, and it is very much about. There's a character in it who's a civil rights activist, and yeah, it's very much about all these things. So this is an interesting conversation with that, since we're covering that at the same time as we're recording this. But we will be done by the time this episode releases. But yeah, and that is the end, and I think I know which redemption arc you are voting for.
Yeah, it's got to be the 2000. I genuinely really did like the 2019 one. I think that may well go into rotation on like my Christmas
Okay.
viewing because it's close enough to a traditional adaptation that it's got a lot of the same themes, but I like the fact that it is they take the source material and use it in interesting ways.
Hmm. For this one, I am going to vote for the 1964. The 2019 one, I don't know. All the stuff with Mrs. Cratchit, I feel like just kind of fumbled the ending for me, and the fact that Fred doesn't come back around, and it just leaves me in a sad place. And I'm gonna say I'm not gonna put that one into rotation. I don't know that I'll put the 1964 one into rotation either, but I think I might think about it more. Um, so yeah, so this one is a tie for the last one. But this means that it is still, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4.5 versus 1. So versus 1.5. So 2019 is the big winner of this lowdown. Doo, 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 doo. uh, We have one more episode coming for this year's Christmas Carol Bonanza. This is always the most fun one of every year. Do you want to shout out the episodes were, or sorry, the films we're covering in our final episode of this year?
So we are looking at the cheesy twists. So we're looking at Mr. Magoo's Christmas from 1962, An American Christmas Carol with Henry Winkler. Hey, um,
That's another
Ebenezer,
American. Well, yeah, we're having an American theme this year, but that one's set during the Great Depression.
Ebenezer, which is a Western version of A Christmas Carol, which, okay. And of course, because it's a
I think that one's
Western, it's got
Canadian.
Jack Palance in it.
Mm-hmm.
Christmas Above the Clouds, which is my pick, because we
Mm-hmm.
had to have a Hallmark movie in there somewhere.
Absolutely.
So this is a brand new Hallmark movie. This is a 2025 Hallmark movie, and the premise of it seems to be: what if A Christmas Carol took place on a plane?
Right.
Um,
Christmas spirits on a plane, like
Spirits on a
snakes in a
plane.
plane.
We got to get the melon farming spirit. Oh yeah, and the last one, Christmas Karma, which is a Bollywood-esque
Mm-hmm.
version of A Christmas Carol.
So again, we shouted this out last time, but in case you didn't hear, Paul, sorry, no Blackadder this year. We are saving that for next year. We
Yeah,
are
we've
already
got a
planning
whole
next
list of
year.
stuff already to do in
Right.
2026.
So if we have not yet covered any of your favorite Christmas carols, please email us at woolshiftustpodcast@gmail.com. You'll find that link in the show notes. Let us know and we can plan it in for our future coverage. Do also jump into the Discord. We have a Wool Shift Dust channel there. Where we'll be discussing all of this. So you'll find that link in the show notes as well. And also links to the Supercast and Patreon feeds, which is the same content, but you get ad-free access. They have the same content as each other, but Supercast offers more options at a better price. You get ad-free access and you get some extra episodes like our deep dive into the chimes. And as far as what else is going on, you can catch up on the Frankenstein coverage that just came out. And I promise more Dune in the new year.
We will, honestly, we will get to it. We will get.
Honestly, I've been working on editing the next episode for
We are
ages.
we are proceeding with George R. Martin like speed with this,
Yes,
but
yes.
yes.
Keep getting distracted by other projects. No, yeah, it's just it's just yeah, I keep having to prioritize making rent. So get more listeners, and then
Yeah,
we can.
more people sign up to the Patreon. So
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so that's what's going on with Love Your Support. Luca, what's going on with It Could Be Said? You said you just recorded an episode.
actually, we did. Actually, we were going to.
Oh, okay.
But life intervened. Life intervened on us. So yeah, It Could Be Said. I think we are recording. Actually, I don't think I'm recording on Sunday because I've got to do more marking. But I think Simon and Will are doing an episode. I'm not
Okay.
sure on what. Oh, by the way, um, you've heard me mention her before in other podcasts, but Abigail Thorne of House of the Dragon fame and Acolyte fame, and also Philosophy Tube fame.
The actress, yeah.
She is doing a full scale reading of A Christmas Carol
Mm,
on her YouTube channel on the 20th of December. If this
okay.
comes out after that, I'm sure it will still be up there. And she's asking for donations for that, and all the proceeds for that are going to go to World Central Kitchen,
Okay, cool.
which is a great charity feeding people in emergency situations around the world.
Okay, cool. I'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, but she's doing the full 3 hour, 3.5 hour Dickens-esque reading of A Christmas Carol.
All right, awesome. Well, I'll find a link to that to put it in the show notes, and also, of course, a link to It Could Be Said, and links to the Lorehounds website where you'll find all the other podcasts in the feed. Especially, I'm going to shout out the main Lorehounds feed, which has been very, very busy. I've been doing weekly coverage with John and Mark of It Welcome to Derry, which is going in my top 10 episodes of the year. David and Nicole have been doing Pluribus coverage. You've been watching Pluribus, right?
I
What
have
do you
been.
think?
I'm a little bit behind, but yes, I have been watching
Okay.
Pluribus.
Okay. Oh, then
Yeah,
lip sipped because
don't
woo,
spoil me. I'm about 3 episodes
woo.
behind. Yeah.
And David and Brian, who is an American historian, did the American Revolution series that was recently released by Ken Burns.
Oh, yep, that's on my list of Christmas things to watch over Christmas. That is.
There you go. And they have to listen to their coverage too.
Yeah.
And there's a chat for that also in the Discord, of course. John and I just released before this episode, we'll have released a Talamasca season one shot. This is part of the Anne Rice Immortal universe. We're huge fans of Interview with the Vampire. Are we huge fans of the Talamasca? We're huge fans of Interview with the Vampire, and we watched the Talamasca. I mean, it's okay. It's okay. It's just nothing else is as good as Interview with the Vampire.
you know, you know what that reminds me of. That
What?
reminds me of me listening to you, John, and John trying to pretend that you like Secret Invasion for like
No, I didn't. We didn't pretend that we liked it. By the end, we gave up on it. But at the beginning, I always go in hopeful. Talamasca, 100,000 times better than Secret Invasion. I'm not going to
Okay.
play about that.
Okay.
And then there's also some movie episodes that just came out there: Predator, Badlands, Wicked, Frankenstein, and watch out for around the time of this episode, there'll be the Christmas coverage. It's going to be an action Christmas. Violent Night is going to be in the main feed, and then Lorehound subscribers will get a double dose of Die Hard.
Yes, it is a Christmas movie. I will not. I
Of
will
course
die
it
on
is.
this hill.
Of course it is. And there's going to be a top 10 TV. There's a survey going on now where all subscribers are filling in their top 10 TVs. And then, we're going to get together and give our top 10 seasons of television from 2025 and see where it all ranks. Any final thoughts from you, Luke, before we
No,
go?
I'm just really looking forward to our cheesy twists.
Yeah.
We've got to get the melon farming spirits off the melon farming plane.
Yes. So thank you to those of you who stuck with us here until the end. This was, as we said, it was a darker carol, but it's by recognizing the shadows that we can enjoy the light of ghosts on a plane.